Yemen, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Syria, in Gaza that had a significant ability not just to strike at Israel, but to strike at American forces in the region, and frankly, at the Sunni Arab countries, both in the Levant and in the Gulf. What we've seen since basically October 7th, 2023, in a series of blows that were not just Israel against Iran or the United States against Iran, but also Sunnis striking back to seize their own destiny, so to speak, in Syria and elsewhere, is a dramatic reduction in the abilities of this proxy network of the Iranians to inflict harm. So when we speak of escalation, what can happen? Can this lead to a broader escalation or broader regional conflict? What we need to realize is that Iran actually had the broader regional conflict it wanted for about 10 or 15 years on its own terms, with no consequences brought home to Iran. And what we've seen in the last 2 years, and especially this week, is that the use of proxies and the development of the ballistic and nuclear capabilities without consequences is at an end. Now those consequences are being revisited upon Iran itself under the theocratic regime, and they've lost the ability to escalate. They have lost the escalation ladder. So I don't fear that this is going to lead to a broader conflict. We've actually been in that broader conflict, and it's closer to an end than to a start now because of the fact that Iran has finally been made to pay a price.
Colonel Outzen, you mentioned fear, and I just want to be a little more blunt in this next one, so I'm mentioning that again. What happened in Cyprus after, on the British base, the Iranian strikes on the British base in Cyprus, and after that, and perhaps as a consequence of that, Spain mentioning that they do not want their bases to be used for any defensive measures either. Do you sense a certain amount of lack of support coming from the Western countries, seeing what's happening in West Asia across countries, especially where there is US presence? Iran isn't holding back anywhere.
Well, I think you're right. I think that there is a hesitance to support the U.S.-Israeli action, and it is notable and sort of a weakness of the overall operational approach that there's not a broad coalition involved here. It is the United States and Israel. Now, there are a number of countries, now that the Gulf countries have been struck by Iran, that are viewing us a little bit differently. But Europe, most of Europe, is sort of reticent to participate in this. And of course, there are countries with whom Iran has relationships, Russia and others. And I believe India's had solid economic relations with Iran. Many countries look at this and say, I don't want any part of that. And there is not a coalition effort going on here. But again, I don't think what we're seeing in the case of Spain or any others is a result of deterrence or a response to the threat of missiles or what Iran is doing militarily, because the military response by Iran is actually quite weak, quite tepid. What we're seeing is sort of a skepticism about what follows. Now, it's clear that Iran has engaged in provocative behavior and aggressive regional behavior, and it's clear that the United States has had enough of that, as has Israel, so we're striking. Nobody knows what happens next. Right. And I think the Europeans are right. They're closer to it, frankly, than the United States is. And the countries that are right on the borders of Iran, like Turkey and some of the Gulf states, have rightly said, well, let's not rush into this. Because who knows what happens when a country the size of Iran, with close to 90 million in population and massive resources and geography, we don't know what comes next. So this is nothing that should have been rushed into. From an American perspective, I don't think it was rushed into. I think the provocation from the Iranians against the United States happened 45 years ago, and they've waged constant war against us. But if I was a European, if I was a Spaniard, if I was a Turk, if I was somebody else living in the region, I'd also say, go slow. Let's not rush into this. So we won't know who's right and who's wrong of it, I suppose, until we see what the fruit of the tree is. How does this all end up? My inspiration, though, is derived from the Iranians that I know and watching the Iranians both on the streets in Tehran, but also in Washington and California. And there's a significant number of Iranians in the United States who are celebrating this, who say, we deserve better than what the regime, the theocratic regime, has brought us. And so I support this. I support the fact that the Iranian people deserve better. And despite the threats in the region, and the risks in the region and the cost politically, even to President Trump, who's faced some opposition from this, I think it's the right path.
Konradson, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective on it and giving insight right from the late 70s, from where, for the Americans, where it started. But of course, there are differing views. There is too much happening. Within minutes, there are developments coming in and more explosions being heard. One can only expect that this settles down at the earliest, given the kind of destruction taking place. There will be more to discuss. Would look forward to having you with us again.
Thank you.
All right, we will slip into a very short break, but this is a continuous coverage of the West Asia conflict. Coming up after the short break, Spain has said that the US is not using joint military bases on its territory for operations against Iran. We'll bring you all the details after this very, very short break. Do stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Kripa. I'm Shivan. We're still discussing what's happening in West Asia. The US President Donald Trump has reacted to the attack on the US embassy in Riyadh.
Talking to a US journalist, President Trump said that world will find out soon about his retaliation. Saudi Arabia has confirmed that at least 2 drones struck the US embassy in Riyadh. Reporting about a conversation with the US President, News Nation's White House correspondent Kelly Mayer said that she spoke to President Trump just after the attack in Riyadh, and he said, and I quote here, "You will find soon what the retaliation will be for the attack on the US embassy in Riyadh and for the US service members killed." Trump also told her that he doesn't think boots on the ground will be necessary anymore.
That's a big development coming in after 2 drones struck the US embassy in Riyadh. Big developments coming in. There has been a reaction coming in from the US president now. Trump has reacted to the attack, saying that the world will soon find out about the US retaliation. Saudi Arabia has confirmed that at least 2 drones struck the US embassy in Riyadh, and this was followed by more explosions which were heard in Riyadh as the West Asia conflict heats up more.
President Donald Trump has said the U.S. initially prepared for 4 to 5 weeks of sustained combat against Iran. Trump's statement has introduced a possible timeline for the conflict, and WION's Susan Tehrani asked the Israel ambassador to UN Danny Danon about the timeline. Here's what he said.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Susan Tehrani from WION. President Trump said that the operations may last about 4 to 5 weeks. I was wondering, is that Israel's assessment as well? Thank you.
As long as it takes. You know, it's not easy for the people in Israel who stay in shelters for long days. It's not easy for our neighboring countries. You know, I get phone calls from people who are stuck now in Dubai and other places. It's not easy. We all sacrifice, but it will continue as long as it takes to achieve the goals of the operation.
US First Lady Melania Trump has chaired UN Security Council meeting.
The session took place as U.S. assumes Council's rotating presidency. This also comes against the backdrop of heightened tensions due to ongoing U.S. and Israeli war on Iran. This is the first time a sitting First Lady or spouse of any world leader has presided over the 15-member body.
Now, the session primarily focused on children, technology and education in conflict, with First Lady emphasizing importance of education and technology in protecting children caught in global conflicts. In her speech, she paid tribute to U.S. soldiers killed in the ongoing war and said the U.S. stands with children across the world, expressing hope for peace without directly referencing recent attacks in West Asia. She also did not address reports of an airstrike on a girls' school in Iran that allegedly killed more than 100 children.
Sure. Education. Children raised in a culture rooted in intelligence develop confidence, innovate, build, compete, and maintain a deep value system. Their knowledge fosters empathy for others, transcending geography, religion, race, gender, and even local norms. They become caring people. But children raised in culture rooted in ignorance are surrounded by disorder and sometimes even conflict. These societies are filled with rigid thinkers who embrace prejudice and shun human dignity.
Before the meeting, Iran's ambassador to the United States criticized Washington for chairing a discussion on protecting children during global conflict, calling it a hypocrisy. Her appearance at UN also took place amid heightened tensions between Washington and international humanitarian community.
President Trump has withdrawn U.S. from the World Health Organization, UNESCO, and several other UN agencies, while allowing billions of dollars in required contributions to remain unpaid. And there's more on this from our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's sent us this from New York.
Assumes the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council. It does so at a moment of escalating global tension, with operations involving Iran continuing to dominate diplomatic discussions. In a historic first, First Lady Melania Trump chaired a Security Council session focused on children, technology, and education in conflict zones, signaling Washington's attempt to keep humanitarian issues on the agenda even as security concerns intensify. During the briefing, officials warned that millions of children are losing access to education because of war, while digital tools are increasingly seen as both a lifeline and a risk, with concerns about online exploitation and armed groups targeting vulnerable youth. The meeting highlights the challenges now facing the United States and its presidency of the Council, balancing diplomacy and global leadership at the UN while conflict in the Middle East continues to shape the international agenda. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right, viewers, this is World DNA. We are slipping into a very short break. Coming up on the other side, it's the fourth day of the US and Israeli military campaign against Iran. Tehran continues its counter-offensive, launching missiles, drones that have struck Arab Gulf states aligned with Washington. There's a lot more that has taken place. We will be breaking all those developments to you. Stay with us. Come right back after this short break.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
breaking
missiles
news.
And raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One. Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
All right, viewers, thank you so much for staying with us. This is World DNA with Kripa. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines of this hour.
Explosions heard across major cities in the Gulf as Iran presses on with retaliatory strikes. Saudi Arabia confirms 2 drones struck the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh.
The U.S. Central Command says 6 U.S. military personnel killed since the start of the war with Iran, up from 4 after the remains of 2 previously unaccounted for service members was recovered from a facility struck during Iran's initial attacks.
Israel says it is conducting more strikes in Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah command centers and weapon storage facilities. One strike hit South Beirut office of a TV channel affiliated with Hezbollah.
Israel's military says it struck and dismantled the headquarters of Iran's state broadcaster in Tehran, claiming it was run by revolutionary guards and had long called for attacks on Israel and the use of nuclear weapons.
Hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned that U.S. military would step up its attacks against Iran. He says hardest hits are yet to come.
The U.S. has no immediate plans to release oil from its strategic petroleum reserve, even as tensions with Iran push crude prices higher. Officials say current supply levels are sufficient, keeping markets on edge amid ongoing West Asia uncertainty.
Even as we continue the righteous mission, they have waged war against civilization itself. True American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice.
It is the fourth day of the US and Israeli military campaign against Iran. Tehran continues its counteroffensive, launching missiles and drones that have struck Arab Gulf states aligned with Washington, even as Israel remains a primary target.
Iran's Revolutionary Guards have launched a large wave of missiles on multiple locations in Israel, and that includes Jerusalem. Israeli military said defensive systems are operating to intercept the threat since the beginning of the war. Besides Jerusalem, Iran has also targeted Israel's government in Tel Aviv as well as security and military centers in Haifa.
The deadliest Iranian strike on Israel still seems to be the one that hit Beit Shemesh on Sunday. At least 9 people were killed in the central Israeli city, and the attacks also keep targeting the Gulf Cooperation Council states. US assets in the Arab nations are in Iran's crosshairs.
Now, in the latest, Saudi Defense Ministry spokesperson, in a statement, said an attack by 2 drones on the US Embassy in Riyadh sparked a small fire, resulting in minor material damage to the building. That's what the official statement reads. A source close to the Saudi army told AFP the Saudi Air Defense intercepted 4 drones targeting Riyadh's diplomatic quarter in the attack.
Now, the US Embassy in the Jordanian capital, Amman, said it has temporarily evacuated its staff due to an unspecified threat. Jordan is among countries across West Asia that have been responding to Iranian counterattacks. And also a day after smoke was seen rising from the diplomatic mission in Kuwait, 3 diplomatic sources have confirmed to AFP that the embassy was struck by a number of drones.
The missiles were also launched towards Qatar. The country's defense ministry said that it intercepted and neutralized 2 ballistic missiles that targeted several areas within the country. In a statement, the ministry said that the threat was dealt with immediately upon detection. As the situation remains tense, the US Department of State has urged American citizens to leave more than a dozen West Asian countries immediately. The list includes Egypt, Saudi Arabia as well, and UAE. More developments. Spain has made it clear that the US is not using joint military bases on Spain's territory for operations against Iran.
The Foreign Minister Jose Manuel Alvarez told local media that the Spanish government will not authorize the use of bases for anything beyond the agreement or inconsistent with the United Nations. He was referring to Naval Base Rota and Moron Air Base. And Defense Minister Margarita Robles said the bases will not provide support except if, in a given case, it were necessary from a humanitarian perspective.
The US operates at the base under a joint Spain-US arrangement, but they remain under Spanish sovereignty. Robles said that the treaty does not cover the ongoing operations.
A flight tracking website, Flight Radar 24, showed that 15 US aircraft have left the bases. Israel-US war on Iran is opposed by Madrid. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez condemned US and Israeli strikes on Iran, calling them an unjustified and dangerous military intervention that he said was outside of international law.
So, like Spain, UK had also initially refused to allow the US to use its bases for an attack on Iran, but on Sunday, Prime Minister Keir Starmer authorized the use of British bases in Cyprus for collective self-defense.
Yesterday evening, we took the decision to accept that new request in order to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved. To be clear, the use of British bases is limited to the agreed defensive purposes. We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strike.
Russia and China have both condemned US and Israel's actions against Iran.
Russian President Vladimir Putin called Khamenei's killing an assassination, while China also came out with a strong statement.
Now, however, France, Britain, Germany, they have presented a united front with the US. Russian President Vladimir Putin strongly denounced the killing of Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei, labeling the US-Israeli operation a violation of international law and even called it an assassination of the Iranian leader. China says Foreign Minister Wang Yi spoke on the phone with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Sunday, with both condemning the US and Israel.
Now, there has been a marked shift in China's response to the escalating conflict in West Asia. After initial strikes, China called for the diplomatic route and restraint. But following Khamenei's death, China termed US and Israeli actions as brazen aggression. The tone has now become sharp and confrontational as well.
The US-Israel military strikes against Iran, which have no authorization of the UN Security Council, violates international law. China is deeply concerned that the spillover of the fighting has affected other countries in the region. China believes that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Gulf countries should also be fully respected. We urge parties to stop the military operations and prevent further spread of the fighting.
Elsewhere, Britain, France and Germany said that they are prepared to work with the United States. A joint statement was released from the three countries.
Now, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that they are appalled by Iran's strikes on their allies. However, Starmer specifically said the UK will not join the strikes.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose. We have taken the decision to accept this request to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk, and hitting countries that have not been involved. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
As we look into South Asia, Pakistan and its leadership are dealing with crisis on multiple fronts.
Unrest that began in support of Iran over the weekends, it spiraled into deadly clashes. Anger has been rising in Pakistan, particularly among members of the Shia community, the Shia minority which is there in Pakistan, following US and Israeli strikes on Iran that killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and other senior officials. Pakistani authorities have deployed troops and imposed a 3-day curfew before dawn on Monday. The death toll from Pakistan's violent weekend protests over the killing of Khamenei has reached at least 25.
Now, the demonstrations against the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei erupted in several major Pakistani cities, including US Embassy in Karachi, where hundreds of protesters attempted to storm American diplomatic building and clashed with police.
In the northern Gilgit-Baltistan region, at least 13 people were killed in clashes between protesters and the police. 2 more people were killed as thousands gathered on the streets of the capital Islamabad, many holding portraits of Khamenei.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who has close ties with both the United States and Iran, said that killing of Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei was a violation of international law. Earlier, he even condemned Israeli strikes on Iran but failed to mention United States.
Sunday's unrest came amid ongoing cross-border fighting between Pakistan and Afghanistan, which began last week after Afghanistan launched attacks in retaliation for Pakistani airstrikes. The war in West Asia, sparked by Israeli and American strikes on Iran, it is only escalating further. Iran, in the latest, is firing one missile barrage after another, and all of West Asia is in its crosshairs.
Israel and the US are also bombing Iran continuously, but Iran seems razor focused on attack and not defense. Explosions in the sky have been seen all over West Asia. Iran is going after Israel and US military bases, which are spread all over Arab Gulf monarchies in West Asia.
Tehran says it has targeted 500 US and Israeli sites so far, and it shows no signs of slowing down because of air defense systems. The damage to Iran's targets has been relatively low, but how long can this last? Reports say that Iran's advantage lies in its vast and inexpensive offensive arsenal. One Shahid 136 kamikaze drone, that's a suicide drone, reportedly costs about $35,000 to make. Compare that to the cost of the interceptor missiles used to take out these drones. Each interceptor can reportedly cost anywhere between $500,000 to $4 million. You do the maths. The cost varies depending on the complexity of the interceptor.
But according to reports, there's another advantage for Iran besides cost. Not only does it already have a massive arsenal of drones and missiles, it can also produce more of them faster. Under wartime conditions, Iran is reportedly capable of mass-producing Shahid drones at a rate of 200 to 500 per month.
Interceptor production can keep up at the lower end of the estimate, but reports say that producing 500 interceptors a month is not possible for the US and Israel. And even if they somehow manage it, it definitely won't be cheap. Add to this Iran's existing inventory. It is believed to have already stockpiled anywhere between 80,000 and 100,000 Shahid drones across varieties. Reports say it also had about 1,500 missiles. Therefore, if Iran wanted to fight a war of attrition, it is possible for it to fire about 2,500 Shahid drones every day for a month at least. And after that, it could still keep churning out hundreds more.
Now, experts say that the US and Israel may not be able to replenish their interceptors fast enough to keep defending against sustained Iranian salvos. According to reports, in the event of a long drawn-out war, Iran would eventually be able to exhaust US and Israeli air defenses, leading to more successful hits over time.
Having launched the first strikes, Israel and the US may be willing to accept the risks of continuous Iranian bombardments. But how long will America's Gulf allies be willing to keep taking the hits? And what will the US choose to prioritize when interceptor stocks start running low? The US may eventually have to choose between protecting its bases and military personnel in West Asia or defending the Gulf monarchies and their critical oil infrastructure.
Will the US save its soldiers at the risk of a major global oil supply shock, or will it let military personnel die to prevent runaway inflation? Every day that the war continues, Iran has the opportunity to force the US into such an impossible choice. Amid heightened tensions in West Asia and renewed conflict between Israel and Iran, concerns are rising surrounding thousands of Indians inhabiting in or stuck in Iran.
Well, many remain stranded, and this is amid a web of airspace closures and mounting security concerns. However, in a respite to stranded Indian passengers, limited flights from Dubai and Abu Dhabi resumed on Monday night, with departures scheduled to Delhi, Mumbai and Bengaluru as part of evacuation operations.
In the latest, a flight from Dubai landed in Chennai's Minambakam International Airport. Another flight landed in Mumbai's Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj International Airport last night. And an Emirates flight from Dubai to India's Bengaluru departed from Dubai Airport yesterday night.
Air India Express has said that it will resume flights to and from Muscat starting today, with scheduled services to Delhi, Kochi, Kozhikode, Mangaluru, Mumbai. However, its operations to Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the UAE remain suspended until noon. The Aviation Ministry has said Indigo is also set to operate close to 10 flights from Jeddah today to facilitate passenger repatriation.
Earlier, the Indian Airlines had cancelled close to 360 flights in the Gulf region. Foreign carriers between India and the Gulf were also expected to conduct limited service. Remember, India-Gulf air connectivity is one of the largest international travel corridors, with the Directorate General of Civil Aviation approving close to 26,500 flights in a week last year.
Reports suggest close to 10,000 Indians may be stranded in Iran's capital, Tehran, and in surrounding areas, including students, business operators, workers, tourists, among others. Many are from the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, who had enrolled in medical courses across various Iranian provinces.
The Gulf countries, on the other hand, host an estimated 10 million Indian citizens who remain stranded amid airspace closures and security concerns. Key airports in UAE, except Abu Dhabi, which saw limited passenger flights resume, Bahrain, Qatar and Kuwait are shut because of airspace closures.
Meanwhile, the Indian Prime Minister spoke to the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, condemning the recent attacks on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and thanking MBS for attending to the Indian community in Saudi Arabia.
Earlier, Prime Minister Modi also spoke with the King of Jordan, and he expressed solidarity and discussed the well-being of the Indian community as well. Prime Minister Modi also held a telephonic conversation with Bahrain's King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, thanking him for extending support and care towards the Indian community there.
Another big development coming in, this time from South Asia. Afghanistan says that it has shot down at least 2 Pakistani drones as part of the ongoing hostilities. It said that a drone was shot down in Parwan province before reaching its target. According to the Afghanistan Defense Ministry, this is the second drone to be shot down today. Earlier, it had claimed to shoot down a drone in Nangarhar.
It also claimed that its defense forces also carried out a targeted strike against a military regime and the facility in the Dant Patan port area, resulting in substantial losses and heavy casualties. Afghanistan claims that it hit several key installations in Pakistan, including a Rawalpindi base near capital Islamabad. Afghanistan claimed that its Air Force conducted precise and coordinated aerial operations targeting the Nur Khan Air Base in Rawalpindi, the 12th Division headquarters in Quetta, a camp in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, as well as several other significant Pakistani military facilities and command centers.
They claimed the strike successfully caused significant damage to the intended targets. And these are the big developments coming in as we're also tracking hostilities in South Asia between Afghanistan and Pakistan. In the latest, Afghanistan says it has shot down at least 2 Pakistani drones as part of ongoing hostilities. They've said that a drone was shot down in Parwan province before reaching its intended target. According to the Afghanistan Defense Ministry, this is the second drone to be shot down today itself. Earlier, it had claimed to shoot down a drone in Nangarhar.
Moving on to business news, Gulf tensions are sending shock waves through global energy markets, raising economic stakes for major importers like India.
And with a significant portion of its crude oil, LNG and LPG imports flowing through the Gulf, India faces heightened exposure to supply disruptions now, rising prices as well and shipping risks. India imports nearly 5.5 million barrels of crude oil per day, with about half sourced from Gulf producers, including Iraq, Saudi Arabia, UAE and Kuwait. In Iraqi Kurdistan, operators have paused 200,000 barrels per day as a precaution, while Qatar Energy has halted LNG exports, removing roughly 20% of global LNG supply. For India, this translates into higher import costs for crude, LNG and LPG, risks to household cooking gas and fertilizer supplies, and inflationary pressure across electricity and industrial sectors.
India is taking active steps to reduce this vulnerability. Long-term LNG contracts with Qatar Energy and ADNOC Gas were designed to secure reliable supplies, but the current Gulf disruptions have temporarily constrained these volumes. And to diversify, India has now signed a landmark LNG cooperation deal with Canada, expanding its supply sources beyond the Gulf.
Domestic measures include boosting LPG production and closely monitoring strategic reserves to maintain affordability and energy security. But the immediate impact could be big considering the current dependence. All right, viewers, that's a wrap on this edition of World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Short break now. This is WION World is One. Stay with us.
Campaigns, elections, alliances, controversies, and power play. Beyond the noise and rhetoric, no election, no ballot issue too small. Stories that analyze global and domestic politics, more than just headlines. A dedicated show with varied perspectives, expert take, citizens' voices, detailed ground reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to Power. Only on WION. World is One.
Get the latest updates.
Destroy their
Breaking
missiles
news.
and raise their...
Credible, clear, continuous. Experts across aisles. Diverse voices, one platform. WION World is One. In-depth coverage of global issues broken down into facts, figures, and simple words. Backed with analysis from field experts who truly matter, because we believe in decoding the real picture for you. So you get a much wider and deeper understanding of stories from around the world, a 360-degree analysis. An award-winning documentary series, week after week creating the maximum impact. Watch WION Wide Angle at these times on WION World is One.
In West Asia, every move shifts the world's balance. Wars, ceasefires, alliances, power never stands still. From Tehran to Tel Aviv, from Damascus to Doha, the West Asia Post cuts through the chaos to reveal the region that shapes the world. Because what happens in West Asia never stays in West Asia. This is the West Asia Post, the region's story, the world's impact.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
nur